a lemon strawberry tart. Welcome to Sanjeev Kapoor Khazana. This is Chef Anil Rohira. And I'm here today to share a very fruity, tangy, very exciting recipe for you. Exciting because the ingredients are such. We have lemons and strawberries and a nice flaky, crusty base. So I'm sure you're guessing what this is. This is going to be a lemon strawberry tart. Let me give you a walkthrough of the ingredients we're going to use. For the crust or the base of our tart, we have all-purpose flour or refined flour or pastry flour in some countries, as it's called. We have powdered sugar, salt, almond flour, just to add a little bit of texture and some nutritive value to the base, diced cold butter, and we have an egg. For the filling component, we have lemon juice, lemon zest, butter at room temperature, granulated sugar, white chocolate, strawberry marmalade, eggs, egg yolks, gelatin. So let's start with the crust, which is the short dough for the tart. We have our dry components, which is the flour, almond powder or almond flour, salt, and powdered sugar. So we're going to combine all our dry components and we're going to add it into the bowl. We're going to add a light paddle attachment that will just barely incorporate all the ingredients. The idea is not to overmix it to get a tough dough. You want a very light, delicate, barely combined dough. And we're going to flatten it and refrigerate it. So we have butter here, which is diced. And you can see this is hard, that it holds its texture. So this is chilled, refrigerated, cold, diced butter. So the butter goes in with your dry ingredients. And we're going to just start to mix this on slow speed. So what's going to happen in the mixing process is your butter is going to slightly flake and start to combine with the flour. So we'll see. The secret or the key to a good tart crust or a tart base is the texture of your dough. If in the mixing process you overmix your tart dough, you're going to end up with a very elastic and a tough tart. And we really don't want that. It's very unappetizing, not very attractive to eat or to experience. So you want a texture that's very short, very delicate. And this is the key here, to incorporate your dough till it just comes together. The butter is not completely combined. It's got this small like bead consistency. And that is what is going to make the tart very flaky. At this point, we're going to on slow speed incorporate our egg. If the butter is completely mixed in with the flour, the texture of the dough is going to be heavy. So you want this nice flaky crust, and that's why you want the butter not entirely combined into the dough. We're going to mix it, as you can see, on very slow speed, just until all the ingredients come together. And we're going to finish it by hand. You can tell even now, the butter is not completely incorporated in the dough. It's evenly distributed, but still retains its shape because it's cold. And here we are. So you see the dough is just starting to form, but it's not completely combined. It's also a good idea to take the egg out of a refrigerator to maintain the temperature of the butter. So you see, it is just combined now. We'll finish mixing it by hand. So we get everything from the bowl. And the idea is not to overmix the dough. Take some cling film, take the dough, spread it out. You're going to keep it covered. And we will nicely seal the dough. You want to make sure you spread the dough out to a nice thin layer. You don't want to have a big mass of dough in there. So the cooling will be more uniform, and it also helps in the ease to roll it out. So we're going to put this in the refrigerator. So we've made the tart dough and we set it in the refrigerator for about 2 hours. So let's have a look and see if the tart dough that we made is firm enough to roll out. If it's not firm enough, I'd recommend you just let it rest in the refrigerator for a little bit more. So here it is. So it's nice and firm. What we'll do is we'll unpack it from the saran wrap, the cling film. And what I like to do is work in parts. Don't roll out the whole dough because it's going to be very difficult to handle. So we'll take out a small piece, maybe a quarter, and the rest can be put back in the refrigerator until further required. So we have a rolling pin and we've got some flour. So we lightly dust our working surface with some flour. Try not putting too much flour because the flour tends to get into the dough and the dough becomes a lot heavier then. And with light motions, we're going to try to roll it out. Make sure you keep moving it from time to time so it doesn't stick on the surface. I'm just going to flatten out with my hand. If it starts to crack too much on the edges, that means the dough is on the cold side, which is fine. And you see, this is a good example of a good mixing. You see the butter pieces here. Now when you roll it out, the butter is going to spread evenly and you're going to have these layers of butter and dough. So it's almost like a quick lamination process. So this is what's going to give your tart that flakiness that you need. Now it's very important to make sure your tart dough is not very thick. You have machines that do it, sheeters, but if you're doing it at home or if you don't have the facility of having a dough sheeter, you can surely roll it by hand as well. And during your working time, if you find that the dough is getting too soft, you can always roll it out like this and give it a little rest. So we'll take a tray, piece of paper, we'll pick up a dough, we'll set it on, and we're going to just lightly refrigerate it so it's firm enough again to work. But I think if you have a good close visual, you will see the pieces of butter that are now elongated and rolled out. And this is what's going to cause this nice, light, delicate, flaky texture in the tart. So I'm just about going to give it 10 minutes rest in the cooler, and then we're going to line the tart shells. So now that we've given our tart dough that has been rolled out about 10-15 minutes in the refrigerator, just so that it firms up, we're going to bring it out and form our tart shells. So I have a cookie ring cutter and tart shells. It can be any form, any shape you like. These are fluted. So I'm going to take the cutter, which is slightly bigger than the tart, and we're going to cut out a round disc. And the idea is to make sure, you see the tart thickness is not too much. I just want to make sure it fits in there and it's enough dough to line the tart shell. So the tart dough is a little bit on the cooler side. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes. Use your fingers, rotate around, and make sure you get into the depth of the tart shell. Okay, that's pretty good. So this size works. You want to have some excess, so you're going to trim it off a little later. Any leftover of the tart dough can be reworked. Try not to mingle it too much because the more you work it, the denser the texture will get. So preserve the texture. Just fold it over a couple of times. This can be refrigerated and then reworked again. You see the dough is a lot more pliable now that it's come to room temperature. And I'm going to gently work my way into the tart shell. With your fingers, push inside the edges here. So I'm going to let the excess stay. I'm going to refrigerate it till it's firm. I'm going to give the dough some rest because we've just stretched it a little bit. Trim off the excess and then we're going to bake it off. All right, now that the tarts have been resting in the cooler for about 10 minutes, let's have a look and see if they're ready to go in the oven. So you see it's nice and firm. I'm going to now just with a paring knife trim the excess off. Now normally in production or in hotels you'll find that they have an exact size cutter to match the tart shell. So you spend less time in getting all the excess off. But it's not a bad idea to trim it off so you know that the tart will not shrink too much after it's relaxed a little bit in the cooler. This is also a good time to gauge the rolling of your dough. You'll see the edges are even along the sides of the shell. So you know that means your dough was rolled out nice and evenly. You want a good proportion of dough to filling. You do not want a tart that's excessively heavy or dense in the crust, because then you won't have enough of filling. So the balance between the filling and the crust has to be just right. So I have my oven preheated, and before I put my tarts in the oven, I'm going to lightly dock the inside so it doesn't balloon up or bubble up, just to make sure that there is some room for the steam to escape. So this is now ready to go in a preheated oven at 180 degrees Celsius. It's been about 20 minutes since we put the tart shells in the oven. I think it should be just about done. Let's have a look. So you see we have a nice golden brown color. Tart shells are done, evenly baked. And what we'll do is we'll just lightly coat it with some melted cocoa butter. Now you'll say, Chef, what if I don't have cocoa butter? No hassles. What you can do is once the tart shells cool down, you can brush it with a thin layer of chocolate of your choice. Okay? Tart shells is still warm. I'm going to lightly just dab the inside because we're going to put a moist filling. This cocoa butter at room temperature will get a little bit harder, and then it will prevent any seepage of moisture from your filling or from your decor to get into the tart shell. So that's why it will preserve the texture of the tart shell for a longer period of time. Just a light touch, and we're going to let it settle down at room temperature. When it's cool, we're going to put the filling in. So now that our shells have been baked and cooled, we're going to take them off the molds. You see it has a nice golden brown, delicate texture. We're going to take these out and we're going to line them up, probably in a tray. And now coated it with some melted cocoa butter or chocolate, whatever the case is. I'm just going to drop in a couple of pieces of strawberries from the strawberry marmalade. It's a small piece, strawberry, if you like, if you're a strawberry lover, or just a bit of the strawberry marmalade as the base. So this normally comes as a surprise to a customer, to your guest, or to your loved ones. It appears to be like a lemon tart, but there's a bit or tint of strawberry flavor in there. So fill it just a little bit, maybe about 15 to 20% of the tart. Obviously, if you're a strawberry lover versus lemon, then you would probably go with a greater proportion of the marmalade in. So to start the filling, we have our lemon juice. We'll put it in. I have still not turned the heat source on. So lemon juice, lemon zest. So before you start cooking your cream, your lemon cream, I'm going to take my gelatin and I'm going to lightly sprinkle it over some cold water. So this will give it a chance to hydrate and bloom. Blooming is a property when the gelatin is allowed to swell and absorb the moisture, and then when we heat it, will trigger the gelatinization process of gelatin. This will take about 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to let it bloom, and now I will start cooking my lemon filling. So I have lemon juice, lemon zest. I'm going to turn the heat source on. This filling is a little bit different, unlike a traditional key lime filling or a lemon curd filling, simply because you have in this some white chocolate as well as some gelatin. Normally when you cook a lemon cream or a lemon curd, you have to boil it or cook it over a double boiler, and you've got to keep whisking it. In this case, we're not going to get very aggressive. We're going to keep the cooking process very mild, and most of the setting is going to come from my eggs, my gelatin, and the white chocolate. Besides, I like a little bit of the white chocolate in there just to take away from the perhaps excessively tart lemon. But if you're a lemon and a tart and an acidic lover, or if you like your tarts to be very acidic, then you can easily ignore the white chocolate and perhaps increase the quantity of gelatin a little bit. So you see it's just starting to heat up. I'm going to make sure my sugar is in there so that it dissolves. And while this is happening, I'm going to whisk my eggs and yolk together. Now this is almost like making a vanilla sauce or a creme anglaise, like you would say, but obviously our base is not dairy, it's lemon juice. So we'll just cook it till it comes to a boil. So you see it's just coming to a boil. I'm going to take some of it off, pour some into my egg base here, off the flame. Now I'm off the flame. I'm going to take my time, make sure this is mixed well. I'm not going to add all my eggs in once because that will coagulate all your eggs and you don't want that to happen right away. So I'm going to temper some, pour it in, make sure you get all the eggs, bring it back, and I'm going to make sure I mix this really good together. You see, it all looks very homogenized now. There are no eggs that are separated from my lemon juice. It is all starting to look as one homogenized liquid or base. And I'm going to go back, I'm going to reduce my heat source. I don't want to get very aggressive because then it'll start cooking unevenly. So on a low heat source, I'm going to start cooking my base. It's a good idea to scrape the bottom of the pot and whisk it at the same time. So scrape so that it's all together and it's not coagulating separately. So we're going to cook it to about 80 to 85 degrees Celsius. How do you say when it's that? You can either use a temperature or I'm going to show you a quick texture check, which means that when it starts to coat your wooden spoon or your spatula, it's almost ready. It's getting there. It's not yet there. It's just starting to thicken. Now mind you, I have yet to add 3 ingredients: the butter, the bloom gelatin, and my chocolate. So I'm going to get the stability, or I'm going to get the thickness in my custard, then add the butter, gelatin, and finally the white chocolate. So you can see the texture has started to change now. So stay with it, watch it closely. You make sure you don't coagulate your eggs. You see it's starting to thicken. I'm going to mix it. I'm going to take it off the heat. I'm going to do my check of temperature, either with the thermometer or with the spatula. You'll see it's nice and thick now. It's not dripping. So this is telling me that the cream is ready. Okay, so now I'm just going to stir it. I will add my butter, nice soft butter at room temperature, and my bloom gelatin. You have to make sure that the lemon cream is hot when you put your gelatin in. I'm going to whisk in my butter. You're going to see everything is going to get into a nice, smooth, silky cream. There we go. Okay, and now for the last ingredient, chocolate. I take my chocolate, grated chocolate, add it slowly, and you see with the heat of the cream, the chocolate is going to melt. So all my ingredients are in there, and the addition of the chocolate will also cool the cream down. At the same time, there's enough heat in my base to melt all the chocolate. I'm going to make sure I scrape everything. I'm yet not transferring my cream to another bowl simply because I'm using the heat of my pot. Wow. You know, I wish you were here. You could smell the aromas of the lemon. Once again, scrape the sides. You get a nice test. You see the shine, the smoothness, the luscious, silky look of the cream. Now is a good time to transfer it into another bowl. And once it comes to just about a warm temperature, we'll fill the tart shells. So we see this lemon cream is just warm now and it's just starting to set up. It's the right time to dispense it into our tart shells and let the setting be completed in the forms. So we'll take a piping bag, use a bag, or you can even spoon it out. Just snap a bit of the tip. And then we'll make sure we don't disturb the setting of the jelly. Just a nice indicator of whether you've done the cream right or not. Takes a nice clean form and a nice gloss on the surface. You see the shine on the top? That means the temperatures and the mixing of the cream was probably right. So I'm going to put it in the refrigerator briefly for the gelatin to set up, for the chocolate to set up, for the butter to firm up, and then when we pull it out, it's time to garnish, about 15-20 minutes, and ready to serve. So it's been just about 15-20 minutes since we put the tart shells in the refrigerator. Let's go have a look and see where we are at. So we see the topping or the lemon cream has set. It's ready to be served, or you can leave it in the refrigerator probably overnight and serve it the next day. So we'll present this very simply with a fresh strawberry slice which has been glazed. You have a nice surprise of this nice fruity strawberry. You have this acidic citrus lemon curd, and then you have a nice fresh strawberry on the surface. You can't go wrong. You don't need a lot to decorate this. And besides, the strawberry is a little bit of a hint as to what's inside. So somebody who is guessing, here's your opportunity. So this is a great spring, summertime dessert. Whether it's for a banquet, it's a buffet, it's a home dessert, or it's just a Sunday afternoon treat. Enjoy.